And I will tell you, this scourge of drug addiction in America will stop. It will stop. Every day, 116 Americans die from an opioid-related overdose. In New Hampshire, the overdose, really death rate, I mean, can you believe this? The death rate is double the national average. Defeating this epidemic will require the commitment of every state, local, and federal agency. Failure is not an option. Addiction is not our future. Our Custom and Border Protection and these people, the job they do is incredible. Seized nearly 1,500 pounds of fentanyl last year, nearly 3 times the amount seized in 2016. And I told China, don't send it. And I told Mexico, don't send it. In 2017, ICE arrested criminal aliens with 76,000 charges and convictions for dangerous drug crimes. Last year, the Department of Justice prosecuted more than 3,000 defendants in cases involving opioid, all of the trafficking and the related crimes, 3,000 cases, including a pharmacist, a physician's assistant, and an opioid trafficker, each charged with committing serious drug crimes in New Hampshire. Whether you are a dealer or doctor or trafficker or a manufacturer, if you break the law and illegally peddle these deadly poisons, we will find you, we will arrest you, and we will hold you accountable. Here in New Hampshire, I applaud all of the drug enforcement agents and law enforcement officers who recently coordinated Operation Granite Shield, an 18-hour enforcement action targeting drug traffickers that resulted in the arrest of 151 people. These are terrible people. But if we don't get tough on the drug dealers, we're wasting our time. And that toughness includes the death penalty. Last year, my commission on combating the incredible crisis of opioids issued 56 recommendations. First, we're taking action to reduce drug demand by preventing Americans from becoming addicted in the first place. So important. That includes increasing federal funding for the development of non-addictive painkillers.
He found his way into our kitchen cabinet, and sadly the rest is history. He got hooked on it and had to go to the street eventually, and he found fentanyl, and he's been gone for 2.5 years, and we miss him every day. Thank you.
Thank you, darling. You take care of
Thank
yourself,
you.
okay? Thank you. We're also taking action to prevent addiction by addressing the problem of over-prescribing. And our Department of Justice is looking very seriously into bringing major litigation against some of these drug companies. We'll bring it at a federal level. Some states are already bringing it, but we're thinking about bringing it at a very high federal level. We're going to cut nationwide opioid prescriptions by 1/3 over the next 3 years. We're also going to make sure that virtually all prescriptions reimbursed by the federal government follow best practices for prescribing. We'll ensure that opioid addiction is not subsidized by the American taxpayer, spending a lot of money on great commercials showing how bad it is, so that kids seeing those commercials during the right shows on television or wherever, the internet, when they see these commercials, say, I don't want any part of it. That's the least expensive thing we can do, where you scare them from ending up like the people in the commercials. So we're announcing a new website, crisisnextdoor.gov, where Americans can share their stories about the danger of the opioid addiction. The second part of our initiative is to reduce the supply of illicit drugs. 90% of the heroin in America comes from our southern border, where eventually the Democrats will agree with us and will build the wall to keep the damn drugs out. Because they don't care about DACA, but they're trying to tie the wall to DACA and DACA to the wall. And they want to keep DACA for the campaign instead of getting it approved, which we could do very easily. My administration is also confronting things called sanctuary cities that shield dangerous criminals. According to a recent Dartmouth study, the sanctuary city of Lawrence, Massachusetts, is one of the primary sources of fentanyl in 6 New Hampshire counties. I'm repeating my call on Congress to block funds for sanctuary cities and to close the deadly loopholes that allow criminals back into our country and into our country in the first place. We're also shutting down illegal online marketplaces and preventing drugs to do that unless you have really, really powerful penalties led by the death penalty for the really bad pushers and abusers. Companies must also be held accountable. The Department of Justice recently created a task force to coordinate investigations and lawsuits against manufacturers and other bad actors that harm our citizens. And I can tell you that Jeff Sessions, who's here with us now, feels so strongly about this. The third part of our initiative is to get life-saving help to those who need it. We're going to make sure our first responders have access to life-saving, overdose-reversing drugs, which, by the way, are amazing. Adapt Pharma makes an overdose-reversing drug for opioids, which I've watched and seen work. It's called Narcan. It's actually incredible. Today, we applaud Adapt Pharma's decision to provide free Narcan to all high schools, colleges, and universities in America. I'd like you to come up, Mike.
And we've provided free of charge 4 boxes to all colleges and universities in the United States, 2 boxes free for every high school in the United States, as well as educational awareness.
I've seen people that are just about dead wake up. Commend a Richmond-based company, Kaleo, for donating more than 300,000 doses of their overdose-reversing drug to first responders, which has already saved more than 5,000 lives in a very short period of time.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. And, you know, you've done a lot already to tackle this issue of drug pricing. So last year, the FDA approved more generic drugs than it ever has in its history, and that brings prices down for patients, for the system, for everybody. And then we're going to be rolling it, as you mentioned, in about a month, a whole slate of other proposals around how we decrease the price of drugs and how we bring discounts that the middlemen right now are getting, how those will go to our patients, to individuals.
Democrats have been pushing back on it, but I think many of them are also coming along. It's called Right to Try. A patient is terminal. There's good progress made with a certain drug. We're going to make it possible for that patient to get that drug. And maybe it's going to work. It's hope.